They vanished without a trace from the most technologically advanced place in the Caribbean. For 30 years, the Arecibo Observatory, that majestic 305-meter dish that was once Earth's most powerful eye to the cosmos, held one of modern science's most disturbing secrets. A place dedicated to the search for extraterrestrial life became the stage for the most inexplicable disappearance of the 1990s. Exactly 30 years have passed since that fateful dawn of June 12, 1994, when 9 elite researchers simply evaporated from Puerto Rico's most secure scientific complex. There were no signs of a struggle. No personal belongings were taken. No farewell messages were left behind. They simply ceased to exist. This is the true story of the 9 missing scientists of Arecibo. For 3 decades, authorities kept the strangest file in the FBI's archives sealed. But when the investigation was finally reopened in 2023, what they found was more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Among the rusted debris of a section closed off since 1995, investigators discovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about that night. A laboratory notebook dated June 11, 1994, filled with incomplete notations, contained calculations that no terrestrial scientist should know. The last lines, written in a trembling hand, simply said, "We are not alone. They are coming." The Arecibo Observatory would never be the same. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more cases like this, and activate the notification bell. Let me in the comments what country you're watching this video from. The missing team represented the international scientific elite of the Arecibo Observatory. Each had dedicated their life to unraveling the mysteries of the universe, never knowing they would become the greatest mystery of all. Dr. Carmen Elena Vásquez, 45, a Venezuelan astrophysicist. She wore her signature white lab coat with the embroidered observatory patch, her inseparable Ray-Ban aviators hanging from her neck. She had arrived in Arecibo in 1989, chasing signals from pulsars. That day, she carried a coffee mug with the Drake equation handwritten on it in permanent marker. Her colleagues remembered her for her infectious laugh and her obsession with finding patterns in cosmic noise. Dr. James Mitchell Patterson, 52, a telecommunications engineer from Michigan. His lab coat showed grease stains from the equipment he constantly repaired with his own hands. He wore his gold Casio watch, a gift from his daughter for his 50th birthday. In his pocket, he always carried a small golden pin of the Voyager 1, his favorite space mission. He had come to Arecibo to perfect the systems for receiving weak signals. Dr. Akiko Tanaka, 38, a signal processing specialist from Tokyo. She wore an impeccably white lab coat and white Nike Air Max sneakers that contrasted with her meticulous personality. She carried a small black notebook where she jotted down every anomaly detected in the radio frequency spectra. Her desk held a small bamboo plant, a symbol of the patience required to analyze years of spatial data. Dr. Roberto Mendoza Herrera, 28, the youngest of the group, a Mexican astrophysicist. A recent MIT graduate, he proudly wore the new lab coat he had been given just 3 weeks earlier. His Adidas sneakers showed the wear of long night walks around the observatory as he pondered complex equations. In his pocket, he kept a photograph of his fiancée, whom he planned to marry that December. Dr. Margaret Thompson, 41, an applied mathematician from Cambridge. Her colleagues knew her for her always wrinkled lab coat and thick-rimmed glasses. She carried an HP 48G scientific calculator that she had personally modified for specific astronomical calculations. Her passion was finding mathematical patterns in seemingly random signals from deep space. Dr. Giuseppe Romano, 49, a radio telescope specialist from Bologna. He wore his lab coat adorned with various patches from European space missions, and always carried a small Italian flag in his pocket. His characteristic stainless steel thermos contained espresso he brewed every morning in his apartment. He was famous for working late, manually calibrating the observatory's most sensitive receivers. Dr. Sarah Williams, 35, a particle physicist from Stanford. Her lab coat showed minor burns from experiments with high-energy equipment. She wore a gold chain with a small silver atom, a gift from her university mentor. She had come to Arecibo to study high-energy cosmic rays and their interaction with Earth's atmosphere. Dr. Pierre Dubois, 43, an electronic engineer from Lyon. His lab coat was always filled with small tools, miniature screwdrivers, pocket multimeters, and test leads. He wore a pair of black Dr. Martens work boots, unconventional for a scientist, but perfect for climbing the observatory's metal structures during night maintenance. Dr. Chen Weiming, 63, the veteran of the group, a theoretical astrophysicist from Beijing. Despite his age, he maintained the curiosity of a student. His lab coat, the oldest of the group, had patches he had sewn on himself. He carried a small book of ancient Chinese poetry, which he read during breaks between stellar observations. The last group photograph shows them in the main control room, taken at exactly 11:30 a.m. on June 11th, 1994. 9 confident smiles, 9 scientists at the peak of their careers with no idea that in less than 24 hours they would become one of the most baffling disappearances in modern history. Their last radio communication, logged at 8:45 p.m. on June 11th, was routine. Base control, night team initiating scheduled observation sequence, all normal in Sector 3. The dawn of June 12, 1994, began with the usual routine at the Arecibo Observatory. Security cameras recorded the first movements of staff at 6:30 a.m. as security guards made their morning rounds along the complex perimeter. The weather was typical for the Caribbean, humid with a temperature of 28 degrees Celsius and partly cloudy skies that wouldn't interfere with the scheduled observations. 07:15 hours, last entry logged at the main gate. Electronic access systems documented the arrival of the 9 scientists in 3 different vehicles. Dr. Patterson arrived alone in his white Toyota Camry, while the rest of the team arrived in 2 observatory vans they used for transport from their hotel in Arecibo, Pueblo. Security cameras show them walking toward the main building normally, carrying their usual equipment, laptops, notebooks, coffee thermoses, and the measuring instruments they would use during their night observation shift. The security guards reported that the group seemed to be in good spirits, exchanging jokes as they crossed the parking lot. Dr. Chen Weiming, the team's veteran, was seen helping Dr. Tanaka carry a heavy box of signal processing equipment. Everything appeared absolutely normal. 08:30 hours, routine activities commence. Administrative logs show the team went directly to the main control room to review data collected during the previous night's observation. The computer system had recorded several interesting signals between 2:00 and 4:00 a.m., originating from the Vega region, which required detailed analysis. Dr. Vásquez took charge of supervising the calibration of the high-frequency receivers while Dr. Patterson checked the amplification systems. The rest of the team divided their time between data analysis and preparing equipment for the scheduled night session. 12:40 hours, lunch break, last seen in the internal cafeteria. The cafeteria's security cameras captured the last clear images of the 9 scientists. They are seen eating lunch together at a round table near the windows overlooking the main radio telescope. The conversation seemed lively. Several witnesses recalled them discussing anomalies detected in radio signals from deep space. Maria Rodriguez, the cafeteria manager, would remember years later that Dr. Romano had asked for extra coffee to go, mentioning it was going to be a long night of work. Dr. Williams had commented on some strange readings on the spectrometer that she wanted to personally verify during the hours of lower atmospheric interference. 17:08 hours. Anomaly alert on the spectrometry console. The observatory's automated systems registered the first sign that something unusual was happening. The main spectrometry console displayed readings that the system classified as anomalous, requiring immediate manual verification. According to technical logs, these signals did not correspond to any known pattern of terrestrial or natural space interference. Dr. Mendoza was the first to notice the anomalies. Records show he attempted to manually recalibrate the instruments, a process that normally took 15 to 20 minutes. However, the anomalous readings not only persisted but intensified over the next few hours. Dr. Thompson began to mathematically document the observed patterns, creating algorithms to analyze the frequency and intensity of the signals. Her notes, found decades later, show increasingly complex calculations and marginalia suggesting a growing concern about the nature of the detected signals. 1930 hours, last external communication. The last documented contact with the outside world was a phone call made by Dr. Patterson to the National Science Foundation Coordination Center in Virginia. According to the official transcript, he reported unusual readings that required immediate analysis by the full team over the next few hours. The officer on duty in Virginia, Dr. Michael Stevens, would recall that Patterson sounded intrigued but not alarmed during the conversation. He mentioned that the team had decided to work through the night to take advantage of the optimal atmospheric conditions and the absence of commercial communications interference. 21:15 hours total communications and power failure in Sector 3. External monitoring systems registered a sudden and complete interruption of all communications from Sector 3 of the observatory, where the main control room was located. The emergency generators, designed to activate automatically in case of a power outage, also failed simultaneously. Perimeter security guards reported seeing strange lights emanating from the radio telescope area for approximately 3 minutes, followed by complete darkness. When they tried to contact the scientific team by radio, they received only static silence. It was at this point in the timeline that the first disturbing visual clue appeared. An auxiliary screen in the administrative building displayed an interference pattern for exactly 47 seconds. When analyzed decades later with advanced technology, it revealed the silhouette of a humanoid figure that did not match any of the missing scientists. 21:18 hours emergency protocols activated. The security systems automatically triggered emergency protocols. A team of armed guards headed towards Sector 3 to investigate the cause of the communications blackout. Upon arrival, they found all doors unlocked and the lights on, but no trace of the 9 scientists. The equipment was running normally. The computers showed data updated until 9:15 p.m., and there were no signs of a struggle or forced exit. Coffee cups were still warm on the desks. Notebooks lay open to the pages they were working on, and the instruments continued to record data automatically. 22:45 hours, first official report to authorities. After an exhaustive search of the entire complex, the head of security, retired Captain Jose Maldonado, made the first official call to the Puerto Rico Police Headquarters in Arecibo. His report was clear but bewildering. 9 scientists have disappeared without explanation from the observatory. There are no signs of violence, no signs of voluntary departure. They are simply gone. The night of June 12, 1994, thus became the beginning of one of modern science's most disturbing mysteries, a disappearance that would defy all logical explanation for the next 3 decades. The first 48 hours after the disappearance were crucial, but they also revealed the technological and methodological limitations of criminal investigations in 1994. The Puerto Rico Police Technical Report, dated June 14, 1994, documents a thorough but frustratingly incomplete investigation that laid the groundwork for decades of speculation and conspiracy theories. Special Agent Ricardo Morales, assigned as the lead investigator, arrived at the observatory at 6:30 a.m. on June 13th, accompanied by a specialized forensic team and FBI agents who had flown in from Quantico overnight. His first impression, documented in the official report, was one of absolute perplexity at the total absence of evidence of criminal activity. The scene they found defied all forensic logic. The 9 scientists had simply vanished without leaving a physical trace of their departure. There were no signs of a struggle anywhere in the complex, no vehicles were missing from the parking lot, and no perimeter security alarms had been triggered. The computer systems continued to function normally, displaying data updated until exactly 9:15 p.m. the previous day. The greatest frustration for investigators was the observatory's security system. The surveillance cameras used magnetic tape technology, storing recordings on cassettes that were automatically overwritten every 72 hours. The critical problem arose when technicians discovered that the tapes corresponding to the period between 7:00 p.m. and 11:00 p.m. on June 12th had suffered damage from demagnetization. Data recovery specialists of the era tried various methods to restore the damaged recordings, but the technology available in 1994 could not retrieve information from severely deteriorated magnetic tapes. This 4-hour gap, precisely during the critical window of the disappearance, became one of the most frustrating elements of the entire investigation. During the first months of the search, 3 seemingly promising leads emerged, which later proved to be dead ends but consumed valuable resources and diverted the investigators' attention. First false lead, sighting in Yauco, June 16, 1994. A farmer named Miguel Santos reported seeing a group of people dressed in white walking along a rural road near Yauco, approximately 45 kilometers from the observatory, during the early morning of June 16. Santos offered a description that vaguely matched some of the missing scientists, specifically mentioning a petite Asian woman and an older man with a graying beard. The police mounted an exhaustive 5-day search of the area, deploying over 50 officers, National Guard helicopters, and canine tracking teams. However, not a single piece of physical evidence was found to suggest the scientists had ever been in that area. It was later discovered that Santos had a history of filing false reports with the authorities and a problem with alcoholism, which severely undermined the credibility of his testimony. This was the first false lead. A second false lead emerged from an altered logbook, dated June 9, 1994. In the observatory's administrative files, investigators found a maintenance logbook with obvious alterations. The page for June 9th had been partially erased and rewritten in a different ink. The changes suggested that unscheduled maintenance had been performed in Sector 3 on that date. This clue led investigators to suspect potential internal sabotage or unauthorized access to the complex just days before the disappearance. However, after interrogating all maintenance employees and analyzing entry and exit records, it was determined that the alterations were made by a nervous supervisor trying to cover up his negligence in failing to report a minor, unauthorized repair. The third false lead involved a stolen access card used 2 days after the incident. On June 14th, security systems registered the use of an electronic access card that had allegedly been stolen from Dr. Patterson's desk. The card was used to enter the main building at 3:47 a.m., immediately triggering alarms and mobilizing security teams. When the guards arrived, they found the facility empty, but the system showed that someone had attempted to access the computer files related to the missing scientist's research. This clue sparked hope that the scientist might have secretly returned, but a subsequent analysis revealed the card had been used by a cleaning employee. He had found it in the parking lot and, not understanding its significance, had used it to get inside to finish some overdue work. What do you believe truly happened? Did the police overlook something obvious? Leave your theories in the comments below as we delve into the years of anguish that followed. And if this story is captivating you, please leave a like so that more people can discover this case. The official report acknowledges that the 1994 investigation lacked the technological and methodological resources necessary to solve a case of this complexity. Investigators did not have routine access to DNA analysis, advanced forensic computing systems, or the digital communication analysis techniques that would become commonplace decades later. Furthermore, intense media and political pressure to resolve the case quickly led them to pursue unpromising leads while neglecting more technical aspects that might have yielded crucial evidence. The case was officially classified as a disappearance, with no evidence of criminal activity on July 28, 1994, just 6 weeks after the investigation began. This failed inquiry not only left the victims' families without answers, but also set a precedent that would hinder any future investigations. For the next 29 years, the file would remain virtually untouched, becoming one of the most frustrating cold cases in the archives of the Puerto Rican police. The 30 years that followed the disappearance of the 9 scientists transformed the Arecibo case into something more than just an unsolved mystery. It became an open wound, deeply affecting both the victims' families and the international scientific community. During these 3 decades of official silence, private grief mingled with public speculation, rituals of hope, and moments of despair that would define the lives of everyone involved. Every June 12th, without fail for 30 years, the families of the missing scientists gathered at the gates of the Arecibo Observatory for a silent vigil. These intimate ceremonies, which began spontaneously in 1995, became a sacred tradition, uniting people from different countries, cultures, and religious beliefs under the shared pain of inexplicable loss. Elena Vásquez, mother of Dr. Carmen Elena Vásquez, traveled from Caracas each year, carrying a suitcase filled with photographs of her daughter and white flowers from her family garden. Her personal ritual included reading aloud the letters Carmen had sent her during her first years in Puerto Rico, back when she still dreamed of detecting the first unequivocal sign of extraterrestrial intelligence. The Patterson family established a scholarship fund in James's memory, which for 3 decades helped engineering students pursue graduate studies in astronomy. Every June 12th, James's wife, Margaret Patterson, would read the names of that year's scholarship recipients, transforming her grief into an educational legacy. On June 12, 1997, exactly 3 years after the disappearance, the government of Puerto Rico issued an official statement that marked the end of the active investigation. The document, signed by the then Secretary of Justice, formally declared the case provisionally clean due to a lack of physical and testimonial evidence to productively continue the investigation. This announcement devastated the families who had held out hope that the search would continue. The phrase provisionally closed was interpreted by many as a euphemism for permanently abandoned, sparking peaceful protests and a media campaign that lasted for months but failed to officially reopen the case. The vacuum of official information created the perfect breeding ground for increasingly elaborate conspiracy theories to flourish. The speculation fell mainly into 3 categories that persisted for decades: secret government experiments, a covered-up alien contact, and industrial sabotage by international competitors. The secret experiment theory suggested that the scientists had been involuntarily recruited to participate in classified research related to military communications or satellite surveillance technology. Some conspiracists claimed the 9 researchers had been moved to underground facilities where they continued to work under false identities. The alien contact hypothesis, fueled by the nature of the work at Arecibo, proposed that the scientists had received a communication of non-terrestrial origin and had been taken by beings from another planet to serve as ambassadors or interspecies translators. This theory gained popularity among international UFO groups, who organized annual conferences to coincide with the anniversary of the disappearance. Over the 3 decades of official silence, dozens of alleged sightings of the missing scientists were reported. The most significant occurred in 1996, 2001, 2011, and 2019, each generating renewed media attention and false hope for the families. The 1996 sighting involved an American tourist who claimed to have photographed Dr. Chen Weiming in a market in Santo Domingo. The photograph, analyzed by experts, did indeed show a man with similar physical features, but subsequent documentation proved he was a retired Dominican mathematics professor with no connection to the case. In 2001, a nurse in a San Juan hospital reported treating a woman who identified herself as Carmen and mentioned working with the student. The physical description partially matched Dr. Vásquez, but the investigation revealed the patient suffered from advanced Alzheimer's and had confused episodes from her past with recurring fantasies. The passage of time did not ease the family's suffering. In many cases, it intensified it. The absence of a definitive closure on the fate of their loved ones created a particularly cruel form of grief that specialized psychologists call ambiguous loss, the pain of losing someone without confirmation of death. Sarah Patterson, daughter of Dr. James Patterson, developed a compulsive obsession with searching for her father during her teenage years, which severely affected her academic performance and personal relationships. In 2004, she wrote an open letter published in the San Juan Star that became a heartbreaking testament to the case's impact on the families. After 10 years of deafening silence, she wrote, "I still wait for his voice on my answering machine. Every time the phone rings after midnight, my heart races, thinking it could be him, explaining where he's been all these years." During a minor renovation at the observatory in 2008, a maintenance crew found an engineering blueprint of the main building among some archived documents showing a section that had never been documented before. The blueprint, dated 1987, indicated the existence of an area marked Restricted Access, Level 7 authorization required, which did not correspond to any known section of the complex. This finding briefly rekindled interest in the case, but authorities concluded it was merely an obsolete blueprint for a proposed expansion that was never built. Nevertheless, the blueprint was filed away with the case evidence, where it would remain, a crucial clue waiting to be understood for another 15 years. Despite the trauma associated with the disappearance, the work done by the 9 scientists before they vanished continued to influence international astronomical research. Their publications became important references in astrophysics and radio telescope engineering, cited thousands of times by colleagues who honored their memory by continuing the research they had begun. The Arecibo Observatory quietly established an unwritten policy of never again assigning teams of 9 researchers to night projects, a superstitious precaution that reflected the institutional trauma that persisted for decades. The years of silence were not simply lost time, but decades of accumulated pain, frustrated hopes, and unanswered questions that multiplied exponentially. When the time finally came to reopen the case in 2023, these 3 decades of suffering had created an emotional debt that no discovery could ever fully repay. On April 22, 2023, what began as a routine architectural restoration became the moment that would change everything we thought we knew about the disappearance of the 9 Arecibo scientists. After 29 years of official silence, fate placed the key that would unlock modern science's most disturbing case into the hands of 2 civil engineers. Mara Feliciano, a 34-year-old structural engineer and graduate of the University of Puerto Rico, and Daniel Cotto, a 41-year-old specialist in historic building restoration, had been hired by the National Science Foundation to assess the structural damage to the observatory after the main radio telescope's partial collapse in 2020. Their job was to meticulously document every section of the complex to determine which areas could be salvaged and which required total demolition. Feliciano, known for her obsessive meticulousness, had noticed minor inconsistencies in the building's original architectural plans in the preceding weeks. Certain measurements didn't perfectly match the physical structures, discrepancies that most professionals would have dismissed as documentation errors, typical of constructions from the 1960s. Feliciano, however, made it a habit to document every anomaly, no matter how small. Her detailed notes showed a space of approximately 3.5 square meters that did not correspond to any documented room, hallway, or technical facility in the official blueprints. The morning of April 22, 2023, was proving particularly frustrating for the restoration team. Cotto had been working in the northern section of the main building, where moisture damage had been most severe during the decades of partial neglect. While removing deteriorated drywall panels from what was officially categorized as a non-functional structural wall, his pneumatic hammer produced a distinct hollow sound. "I knew immediately there was something behind that wall," Cotto would recall months later in his testimony to investigators. "After 20 years of restoring historic buildings, you can tell the difference between a solid wall and one hiding an empty space." Feliciano joined Cotto to examine the suspicious wall. Using a portable metal detector and an improvised medical stethoscope, they confirmed that there was definitely a hollow space of considerable size behind the drywall. The decision to break through was not made lightly. Both engineers were aware of the legal implications of altering a structure without prior authorization. After a phone consultation with their supervisors at the National Science Foundation, they received permission to make a limited exploratory opening in the wall. Using hand tools to minimize potential damage, they created an opening about 60 centimeters in diameter. The first glimpse inside revealed a small but clearly habitable space, about 2.5 meters high with unpainted concrete walls. The air that emerged carried a characteristic smell of dampness and organic decay, suggesting the space had been sealed for decades. Cotto was the first to enter the compartment using a high-powered LED flashlight. His initial description, recorded in the official report, was terse but powerful. "There are personal items in here. This isn't just an abandoned storage space." The complete inventory of the hidden space revealed a collection of objects that immediately established a connection to the missing scientists. The most significant items included a green JanSport canvas backpack containing personal documents, including the passports and identification cards of 3 of the missing scientists: Dr. Patterson, Dr. Tanaka, and Dr. Romano. The documents showed signs of moisture damage but remained legible. Several laboratory notebooks with entries in different languages: English, Spanish, Japanese, and Italian, corresponding to the research projects the scientists were developing in June 1994. The last entries were dated between June 10 and June 11, 1994. fragments of clothing that matched descriptions of what the scientists were wearing on the day they disappeared. Pieces of white lab coats with the observatory's logo, a white Nike Air Max shoe that matched those worn by Dr. Tanaka, and a severely damaged gold Casio watch belonging to Dr. Patterson. But the object that would completely change the course of the investigation was a Sony tape recorder, model TCM 5000 EV, a portable cassette device popular in the 1990s. The recorder was partially hidden under debris in the farthest corner of the compartment, wrapped in a plastic bag that had shielded it from the moisture for 3 decades. According to Feliciano's official testimony, the device was found behind a detached panel with rust marks, suggesting it had been exposed to condensation for years. But the plastic bag had preserved the internal components well enough to keep the tape inside intact. The tape inside the recorder showed signs of degradation. Yet a preliminary analysis with portable equipment confirmed it held a recording. The quality was poor, a consequence of its age and storage conditions, but it was audible. Both Feliciano and Cotto immediately understood the magnitude of their discovery. They suspended all further work in the area, sealed the compartment with security tape, and contacted the police directly before attempting to play the full recording. "We knew we had found something that could change everything," Feliciano stated during his first media interview. "We weren't just engineers at that moment, we were witnesses to crucial evidence in one of Puerto Rico's most important cases." The preliminary audio they managed to hear before the authorities arrived contained broken voices, static interference, and a phrase that would repeat obsessively in their nightmares for months to come. "They're not alone here. They can see us. We can't get out." April 22, 2023 was not just the day new evidence was found in the Arecibo case. It was the day it was confirmed that the disappearance of the 9 scientists had been far more disturbing and complex than anyone had imagined during 3 decades of speculation and slants. The official reopening of the Arecibo case in May 2023 marked the beginning of the most advanced forensic investigation ever applied to a 3-decade-old disappearance. The combination of modern technologies with evidence preserved for 30 years created investigative opportunities that would have been impossible in 1994. But it also presented unique challenges related to the temporal degradation of samples and potential site contamination. The new investigation was led by Dr. Isabella Moreno, a specialist in digital forensic criminology from the University of Chile, working in collaboration with the FBI, the Puerto Rico police, and specialized laboratories in the United States and Europe. The multidisciplinary team included experts in degraded DNA analysis, magnetic media restoration, behavioral pattern analysis, and digital crime scene reconstruction. Dr. Moreno had built her international reputation working on complex cold cases, including disappearances in conflict zones and forensic analysis of archaeological sites. Her methodology combined traditional criminal investigation techniques with emerging technologies in artificial intelligence and big data analysis. The Sony recorder found in the hidden compartment became the centerpiece of the new investigation. The tape was immediately transported to the FBI's specialized laboratories in Quantico, where technicians specializing in the restoration of antique media worked for 6 weeks to extract and digitize the content without damaging the original evidence. The restoration process revealed a recording of 47 minutes and 23 seconds, containing fragmented conversations between at least 5 different voices, tentatively identified as belonging to Drs. Patterson, Vásquez, Tanaka, Romano, and Chen Wei-Ming. The audio quality varied significantly, alternating between nearly unintelligible segments and moments of startling clarity. The most disturbing segments of the recording included descriptions of unidentified presences in the observatory, references to signals that shouldn't exist, and conversations about the need to document everything before it was too late. The recording ended abruptly with sounds of static interference and what analysts described as human vocalizations of extreme anguish. The labs used artificial intelligence algorithms developed specifically for forensic audio analysis to separate the individual voices, reduce background noise, and enhance the intelligibility of the conversations. This technology, non-existent in 1994, allowed them to extract information that would have been impossible to obtain with the resources of the era. Spectrographic analysis revealed vocal patterns consistent with extreme stress in all speakers, as well as changes in breathing patterns that suggested growing fear or panic as the recording progressed. More disturbing still, the analysis detected the presence of at least 2 additional voices that did not correspond to any of the known scientists. The fingernail fragments found under a console in the control room were subjected to next-generation DNA analysis techniques that can extract genetic profiles from extremely degraded samples. Laboratories at the University of North Texas, specializing in the identification of ancient remains, processed the samples using techniques that multiply microscopic amounts of genetic material. The results confirmed the presence of DNA from at least 6 of the missing scientists, but also revealed genetic material from an unidentified individual, which did not match any profile in national or international databases. This ghost profile became one of the most compelling leads in the modern investigation. Investigators meticulously recreated the forensic techniques available in 1994 to understand exactly what information had been available to the original investigators and what had been missed due to technological limitations. This comparison revealed that the 1994 investigation had been competent by the standards of the time, but that they had overlooked crucial evidence that could only be detected with modern technology. For example, modern fingerprint analysis techniques revealed latent partials on metallic surfaces that had been considered unprocessable in 1994. These partial prints, though insufficient for positive identification, provided additional evidence of human activity in areas of the observatory that had officially been empty on the night of the disappearance. Using 3D laser scanning technology and digital photogrammetry, the team created an exact virtual recreation of the Arecibo Observatory as it existed in 1994. This reconstruction allowed investigators to virtually walk through the facilities, test different theories about movement paths, and identify areas that might have been overlooked in the original investigation. The digital reconstruction also made it possible to analyze lighting patterns, security camera fields of view, and potential escape routes that would have been available to the scientists or their possible captors. This analysis revealed at least 3 undocumented routes that could have allowed an exit from the complex without triggering perimeter alarms. The observatory's computer systems, which had continued to run after the disappearance, contained metadata that had remained inaccessible for decades due to obsolete storage formats. Digital archaeology specialists managed to recover system logs, temporary files, and activity records that provided a minute-by-minute timeline of computational activity during the critical hours. The official report from the San Juan Forensic Sciences Laboratory concluded, "The application of modern forensic techniques to evidence preserved for 3 decades has revealed information that fundamentally transforms our understanding of the events of June 12, 1994. The physical evidence confirms that the 9 scientists were present at the observatory during the critical hours and that their disappearance was not voluntary." During a detailed analysis of the hidden compartment, investigators found a handwritten note inside a deteriorated hard hat. It contained specific geographic coordinates: 18 DG 48.7 N, 66 DG 45 09.4 W. These coordinates corresponded to a location in the central mountains of Puerto Rico, approximately 37 kilometers from the observatory. The handwriting was analyzed by graphology experts and compared with known samples from the missing scientists. The results suggested with high probability that the coordinates had been written by Dr. Chen Weiming, based on specific characteristics of number formation and writing pressure. This handwritten note would become the clue that would ultimately lead to the case's resolution, but it would also raise even more disturbing questions about what had truly happened on that June night in 1994. The modern investigation had achieved in months what 3 decades of speculation could not, establishing that the scientists had been present during the critical hours, that their disappearance had been forced, and that there was physical evidence of at least one unidentified person at the scene. The analysis of the coordinates found in the hard hat led investigators to an abandoned cabin in the central mountains of Puerto Rico, where the most disturbing truth about the disappearance of the 9 Arecibo scientists would finally be unraveled. What they discovered was not just the resolution of a 3-decade-old mystery, but the confirmation that the case had involved elements of obsession, scientific paranoia, and a disturbed mind that had managed to execute one of the most elaborate crimes in modern history. The name that emerged from the investigation was Dr. Marcus Holbrook, 54 years old in 1994, a former employee of the Arecibo Observatory who had been fired in August 1992 for inappropriate conduct and violation of security protocols. Holbrook, a brilliant but profoundly unstable theoretical physicist, had developed a growing obsession with theories of extraterrestrial contact during his 5 years at Arecibo, which eventually led to increasingly erratic behavior. Personnel records, reviewed exhaustively during the new investigation, revealed a troubling pattern of behavior that had been downplayed or ignored by supervisors at the time. Holbrook had been reported multiple times by colleagues for making disturbing statements about hidden presences at the observatory, for working unauthorized hours on personal projects, and for attempting to access classified data related to military communications. Dr. Patricia Reeves, a forensic psychologist specializing in complex criminal profiles, was hired to develop a retrospective analysis of Holbrook based on personal documents, colleague testimonies, and physical evidence found in the mountain cabin. Her report, completed in September 2023, painted a portrait of an individual with superior intelligence combined with severe paranoia and obsessive-compulsive tendencies. During his years at Arecibo, Holbrook had developed an elaborate personal theory that blended legitimate theoretical physics with pseudoscientific speculation about interdimensional communication. He firmly believed the observatory had received signals from non-terrestrial intelligences, which were being deliberately concealed by a conspiracy involving the U.S. government, the international scientific community, and agents infiltrated among the observatory's researchers. The investigation revealed that Holbrook had begun planning his assault on the Arecibo scientists immediately after his dismissal in 1992. For 2 years, he had meticulously studied work schedules, security routines, and the observatory's technological systems. Leveraging contacts he maintained among maintenance staff and some researchers who were unaware of the real reasons for his termination. Holbrook's personal notebooks found in the cabin contained detailed diagrams of the observatory, including blueprints of restricted areas not found in public documents. He had identified the hidden compartment where crucial evidence would later be found, and had prepared it as an operations center for his plan. Holbrook's obsession centered on his belief that the Arecibo scientists had established contact with extraterrestrial intelligence and were participating in a massive cover-up. His writings, which filled more than 40 notebooks, showed a gradual progression from legitimate scientific speculation to extreme paranoia and criminal planning. Holbrook believed that the 9 scientists working the night shift on June 12, 1994, were the primary nodes of the conspiracy and that eliminating them would expose the truth about extraterrestrial contact. His notes included detailed conspiracy profiles of each victim, where he described their supposed roles in the cover-up and the specific reasons why each had to be neutralized. The investigation revealed that Holbrook had corresponded during the 90s with individuals associated with similar events at other scientific facilities. Letters found in the cabin showed regular communication with a group of people who described themselves as truth investigators and who had been involved in minor sabotage incidents at the Jicamarca Radio Observatory in Peru in 1993. And the Very Large Array in Socorro, New Mexico in 1995. Although these incidents had not resulted in disappearances or serious damage, they showed similar patterns of obsession with conspiracy theories about extraterrestrial contact cover-ups and the specific targeting of scientists involved in space signal research. Perhaps the most disturbing element of the entire investigation was the discovery of an internal security report dated March 1994, just 3 months before the disappearances. It had specifically warned of vulnerabilities in the observatory's security system and had mentioned Marcus Holbrook by name as a potential threat requiring continuous monitoring. The report, prepared by Head of Security Jose Maldonado, the same man who would report the disappearances months later, warned that Holbrook had been seen loitering around the observatory's perimeter on several occasions during 1993 and had attempted to contact current employees to obtain information about ongoing research projects. More critically, the report recommended the immediate implementation of enhanced security protocols for night shifts and updated background checks for all personnel with access to sensitive areas. These recommendations were never implemented, citing budget constraints and administrative bureaucracy. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place in February 2024, when Marcus Holbrook, 84 years old and a resident of a nursing home in Orlando, Florida, was located by investigators. Holbrook, suffering from advanced dementia, had spontaneously begun to confess details about the scientists in Puerto Rico during sessions with his geriatric psychologist. With appropriate legal authorization, investigators recorded a series of interviews with Holbrook during which, in moments of lucidity, he provided specific details about the planning and execution of the disappearances that only the perpetrator could know. His confessions included details on how he had accessed the observatory using obsolete security codes that still worked due to negligence in system updates, a precise description of the location of personal items he had hidden in the secret compartment as trophies from his operation, and an admission that he had used his knowledge of the observatory's communication systems to create the electromagnetic interference that had damaged the security recordings. Holbrook's most disturbing confession revealed that he had lured the scientist out of the observatory with false reports of electromagnetic anomalies at an auxiliary antenna located in the mountains. Once there, using a combination of chemical sedatives and threats with weapons, he had forced the victims to accompany him to the cabin, where he had prepared what he described as an interrogation center to extract information about the extraterrestrial contact. The specific details of what happened in the cabin remain sealed in court files due to their extremely disturbing nature, but investigators confirmed that none of the 9 victims survived beyond the first 48 hours after their disappearance. What you are about to discover is more disturbing than you can possibly imagine. If you believe you can handle the truth, continue listening, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Modern investigative techniques finally unraveled every seemingly inexplicable element of the original case. The electrical failures were caused by electromagnetic interference devices, which Holbrook had strategically placed around the observatory. The presences mentioned in the recordings referred to Holbrook himself, who had been stalking the scientist for days before the attack. The hidden compartment was a temporary cache he had prepared for evidence and the equipment used in the crime. The truth behind the disappearance of the 9 Arecibo scientists involved no government conspiracies, no extraterrestrial contact, and no paranormal phenomena. It was the terrifying result of the paranoid obsession of a brilliant but deeply disturbed man who twisted his own conspiracy theories into a justification for one of the most elaborate and calculated crimes of the modern age. On April 12, 2024, exactly 29 years, 10 months, and 1 day after the 9 scientists vanished, the Superior Court of San Juan delivered a historic sentence, officially closing one of the most complex and prolonged criminal cases in Puerto Rican history. Marcus Holbrook, at 84 years old, was found guilty in absentia on 9 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, destruction of evidence, and criminal conspiracy. However, due to his advanced dementia, which rendered him incapable of understanding the legal proceedings or assisting in his own defense, the court deemed him incompetent to stand a traditional trial. The presiding judge, the Honorable Carmen Delgado Botao, stated in her ruling that while the defendant's medical circumstances prevented traditional punitive justice, the evidence presented unequivocally established his responsibility for these heinous crimes. Holbrook was sentenced to permanent confinement in a maximum security psychiatric institution, where he would remain until his death. The verdict was delivered to a courtroom filled with the families of the 9 victims, many of whom had grown old during the 3-decade wait for justice. Elena Vásquez, mother of Dr. Carmen Elena Vásquez, now 89, expressed in a statement read by her granddaughter, "Justice arrived late, but it has arrived. Now I can close my eyes knowing my daughter can rest in peace." Margaret Patterson, the widow of Dr. James Patterson, told the media, 30 years is an eternity to wait for answers, but these answers finally allow the real grieving process to begin. We no longer have to wonder what happened. Now, we can focus on remembering who our loved ones were. On June 12, 2024, precisely 30 years to the day of the disappearance, a symbolic funeral was held on the grounds of the former Arecibo Observatory. The ceremony, jointly organized by the families and the international scientific community, drew over 500 people from around the world. 9 empty caskets, each draped in the flag of the victim's home country, were arranged in a somber semicircle before the remnants of the collapsed radio telescope. Colleagues, students, and family members offered powerful testimonials about the professional and personal legacy of each of the missing scientists. The Arecibo case permanently transformed security protocols at scientific installations worldwide. The National Science Foundation implemented new requirements for background checks, monitoring of former employees with access to sensitive information, and redundant security systems for remote research facilities. Additionally, the Arecibo 9 Scientists Memorial Fund was established, which finances research scholarships in astrophysics, telecommunications engineering, and spatial signal processing. In the decades since its founding, the fund has supported the education of over 200 graduate students who continue the vital scientific work the victims had begun. The case also led to significant improvements in missing persons investigation protocols, including enhanced preservation of physical evidence and the implementation of periodic reviews of cold cases using emerging technologies. As Dr. Moreno, the director of the Modern Investigation, stated during the closing ceremony, the case didn't end the day they disappeared. It ended when the truth came to light 30 years later. Their legacy is not the tragedy of their vanishing, but the scientific inspiration they continue to provide for future generations. If you've made it this far, it's because this story resonated with you. Subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss the next investigation. Let me know in the comments what case you'd like me to cover next. Is there an unsolved mystery from your country that needs a voice? Tell me about it below. Like this video if you want more stories like this one, and share it with someone who appreciates well-researched true crime. Until the next case.